Hey, hello, and welcome to another edition of Live Since You Asked, not me. The show where we visit with St. John's Prep alums who are achieving remarkable things across the country and around the globe. I'm your guest host, Chad Konecki, standing in for Dr. Hardiman. Today we're joined by Marybeth Gillespie, a distinguished member of the class of 1977, which to date is the last of 6 graduating classes from SJP to include women. A little background before we begin. Marybeth is a native of Melrose, Mass. She's been a neonatal nurse for parts of 5 decades now. She's cared for seriously ill newborns from coast to coast, serving vulnerable populations in San Francisco, 2 separate stints in the nation's capital, also New York, and the Boston area now. She's raised 3 daughters, sending them to Catholic schools K through 12. And as she puts it, survived 9/11, anthrax attacks, the DC sniper, and my husband's deployments to Germany, Afghanistan, and Iraq. She now works in a neonatal ICU at South Shore Hospital, and she is graciously giving us her time and joining us from Rhode Island this afternoon. Is that right?
Yes, Bristol, Rhode Island.
Marybeth, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you.
Hey, I wanted to kind of dive right in with the serious stuff, and then we can get more casual. First of all, having done a few of these now, it's quite clear to me that the guests all have somewhere around 29 hours in their day. Most of us only have like 24. So can you confirm or deny that?
I missed, we went out. I didn't hear the beginning. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I said it, just so many of our guests are so accomplished. I'm of the belief that you all have 29 hours in your day and the rest of us just have 24. Is that true? Do you have 29?
Exactly.
When did you know you wanted to be a nurse?
Well, growing up in my household, my father was a physician. And so my mother told each of us that we were going to be a physician. That was what we went to college to be. And I think when I was in high school and I really enjoyed my science classes and my math classes. So I thought, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe this will be okay. But I did in high school get a job in a hospital, and I was a housekeeper. But I think I just used to spend a lot of time looking at all the different people and what they did and kind of figured out what I might want to do. And it didn't really dawn on me until I was already in college that what I wanted to do. So
that's fascinating. It seems to me though you've always sort of been on the front line, treating patients in the crack cocaine crisis in San Francisco, doing experimental stuff in your first stint in DC, HIV/AIDS neonatal kids and kids who had narcotic withdrawal when you're in Boston. Is that a coincidence, or did you seek that out?
I think maybe it has to do with short attention span. I like the adrenaline rush, and kind of like going, doing many different things at once. So in the NICU, you definitely do many different things at once. You're managing the drips of the babies and the ventilator of the baby and all that different things. And then you're also dealing with the parents who are there next to you and the whole emotional side of it. So I think I just like having a lot going on. And then with the drug exposed babies, that was a totally different thing. And it was more, I think, intellectual and trying to figure out where they came from and trying not to just be mad at them for what they were doing to these babies, but realize that opioid addiction is a disease. It's not a moral, issue. It's not that they have a problem morally, it's a medical issue. And I had to tell myself that a lot in dealing with these people, because you see these poor babies and they didn't ask for this and they are in the worst pain. So I don't know, did that answer the question?
Yes, it did. And it tees up my follow-up perfectly. I've had an opportunity to speak with a number of frontliners who are alums of the prep during this time. And, a lot of them are reporting a sense of being, these are grizzled veterans too, right? They're reporting, being overwhelmed, a sense of being overwhelmed, a sense of helplessness, and a sense of not being accustomed to so many patients whose status changes so quickly.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about your job, and I thought, that's kind of every day in a NICU, isn't it? I mean, are you a little more inoculated against those kind of emotional surges right now?
I wouldn't say so, because I think when this whole COVID thing started, I still had that anxiety walking into work every day.
Sure.
I would get that anxiety. I can remember walking into University of Rochester where it was a level 4 and it was very intense, intensive care unit. And I used to walk in thinking, oh Lord, what am I going to hit today? Can I handle it? And I think I feel that a little bit at the beginning of this whole COVID situation is, I'd be walking up the hill to work thinking, what is it going to be today? Because it seemed like back then the rules were changing every day.
Mm.
The equipment was changing every day. We were out of things and they were saying, oh no, now that's okay to use this. And you were kind of always wondering, is this right? Or is this, is this the right thing to do? So I can't say that I'm inoculated by it, but you're right. In neonatal intensive care unit, things change very quickly. Babies get sick. They can go from well to very sick very quickly.
It's an intense experience. I can't really imagine you have worked at a level 4 in the past, and that is a acute care for infants that often involves, correct me if I'm wrong, congenital issues or issues requiring surgery. Is that how we define level 4?
Yes, surgery, and I think now they consider ECMO to be, you have to have ECMO to be a level 4, which is the extracorporeal membrane oxygenator, which they started using on babies in the 80s and then started using it on adult. I think the first time they used it was on an adult, but then it didn't go well with adults, so they went back to just started using it on babies, which it worked well. All these babies with lung disease, meconium aspiration, things like that. So I think that is what makes up a level 4. I think it has to have ECMO, surgical, pediatric surgeons on hand, and possibly cardiac as well, which we did. University of Rochester was a very big hospital in the midst of not many other hospitals. There was a bunch of community hospitals, but they were a referral center for a large area. So I saw things there that I had only read about before, as far as, like I said, the congenital anomalies and things like that. It was a routine, normal day to have, very exciting, I would say, congenital anomalies.
Yeah. Wow. And you mentioned ECMO, this oxygenation technique for infants with lung disease. That was one of your first gigs, right, in DC?
Yeah, that was when I first started in the NICU, I went to Georgetown because they were the only ones hiring people that could work in a NICU without experience. It seemed like every time I tried to get into a NICU, you had to have NICU experience. And it's like, how can I get experience? So I moved to Washington, D.C. and found, because Georgetown was hiring people that were not new graduates. I had had experience, but just not NICU. And so I went to work there. And after a couple years, one of the doctors was interested in starting this ECMO program. So there were a few of us selected to go off to a lab, and we learned how to do it on a lamb, baby lambs. And it was interesting. And then we finally after I think a couple months doing it on lambs, we brought it into the NICU and did it on our first baby.
And had success.
Yeah, it was a success, yes.
That's great.
I mean, they learned a lot at the beginning, but it was a success. They still do it now, as far as I know.
Yeah. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about your prep experience. Specifically, is there any aspect of your time at the prep and your education at the prep, whether it be abstract or something more tangible, that you could point to as having prepared you in some way for the career you chose?
Well, certainly my teachers, I think. Seeing as the women were so few, they were all very, and the students as well. I think I felt that I had to not stand out, not ask too many questions, and just try and, be middle of the road. But then, after, the teachers would always not really stand for that. They would always make sure that you were called on as much as everyone else and treated just as equally. But it did make you look for things that you couldn't, like there was no PE, so we kind of branched out. And I don't know, I know for at least one season, we did track, because the track coach said, why don't you come run track? We said, oh, okay, because they were inviting us. They were a lot, anything they would allow us to do, we would try. Some other things like I remember, and I wish I could remember some of the math teachers, but my science teacher, Brian Sutcliffe, was phenomenal. And he had a lot of us in his class, not at once, but in different classes. And I think everyone would speak very highly of him, that he definitely treated us equally, called on us, probably called on us maybe even more than the other people, just to make it, stronger in a way that, we could speak out in. So,
yeah.
So I would say those kind of aspects, but and the students were wonderful too. I mean, I can't imagine it now. Like when I think back, I can't really, I don't know why they didn't treat us badly. For some reason, I think that at that age, boys do that, but they really didn't.
That's impressive as well.
Yeah.
If you could go back and do anything differently about your high school experience, or access something that wasn't accessible then, what would really jump to the top of your list? Would it be something like competitive athletics?
That might have been something. I think in high school you need some kind of outlet. Now, I know a lot of the people worked in drama, and that didn't interest me, so I didn't do that. But some of the other girls did. We were all cheerleaders, which we decided that I don't know if someone told us we had to be, but I think we put the pressure on everybody. If I'm going to do it, you're going to do it. And everybody just did it. And and none of us were what you would call cheerleader type, but we did it, and that was fun. So I guess that would be one thing, but I can't really think of too many other things.
Yeah, that's fair.
We didn't really have a locker room or a ladies' room. We had one bathroom, but we shared, but
isn't that amazing? Gosh, times have changed.
Times have changed, yeah.
We talk a lot about mentors with the student body, and seeking out mentors, and accessing as many opinions as you can, especially from people who've been where you want to go, or anything that might be helpful. So I'm curious if mentors have been a huge part of your career development, and if you recall anybody from the prep even that served as a mentor.
Well, I think from more of an emotional and I don't know if the word is emotional, but empathetic. Somehow Brother Sullivan brought parts of me out in me that made me feel like, I don't know, I would say he was a mentor in things he would say to us and talk to us about in class. He taught, I don't know what religion, but it was more of a philosophy.
Right.
And then again, Brian Sutcliffe who taught science. I feel like if I say that brother's name that taught math that I remember, I might get it wrong, but Brother I sounds familiar to me now that I'm just, and I remember him as being also very helpful in mentoring in that aspect.
Those are great. I mean, gosh, you have terrific memory. We're getting so many audience questions that I want to move to them in a minute, but I wanted to ask about what advice, I mean, you've seen it all, I think, in your field in a lot of ways. And I'm curious, what advice would you give someone who's graduating or will graduate soon about getting into the field of medicine, or even in particular nursing?
Well, I think that what worked well for me was having a job in a hospital and just being able to see. And although housekeeping sounds ridiculous, you got into every single room and every aspect of it. I mean, I was on the maternity ward, I was in the ICU, I get to see so much. You could be in the operating room. You were everywhere. My father was a physician, so he also would, bring me into things if I had an interest in something. If I wanted to see an operation, back then it was okay. He'd ask the patient permission, and then you could just go in and observe, not touch anything.
Wow.
So I think and I think there's plenty of physicians out there that would mentor and allow you to do that, and nurses, anyone. I have many times in my life brought nurses in with me, or not nurses, but students in with me, high school students, to see what I do and show them. Of course, now no one's allowed in, but
right.
Actually they will be again.
Yes, we all are awaiting that day anxiously.
But I think any type of job you can get in a hospital, just see and look and just ask questions. Follow someone around, shadow them for a day. That's about.
Yeah, shadow. So some questions from the audience. Let's see. As our seniors graduate, what would you suggest they do to maximize their participation in the alumni community?
I don't feel very comfortable answering that because took me 40 years to come back to a reunion.
But you came back.
But I came back, and our class is very close now, and now we get together regularly. But I think that had to do with the fact that I moved away and I just kind of lost track of everyone.
Sure.
But it's easier now with email, and stay in touch, because the people you met in high school are really your kind of people. They're just, the goal. You have a lot of memories with those people, and it's important. So email, all that kind of stuff. Whatever you do to stay in touch now. Instagram, I don't know all the ways.
There's new ways every day. There's no way to keep up. Here's another one. How do you support yourself in such a high stress and high emotion environment, work environment, obviously?
I used to run a lot. Running used to be what I would do. And reading, running, being outside, and sports. That was always my release. But I don't really feel that stress, really. I mean, come out of work and you take a deep breath now, and I don't know. I don't feel the stress I did when I was younger as far as that goes. So maybe that's why I'm not running as much.
But you are pretty avid. I read somewhere that you've run marathons, triathlons. Is that right?
Well, my husband and I decided for our 40th birthday we were going to run a marathon. So we did run 2. We did it when we were 40 and we weren't happy with our results. So we did it 41 as well. And then we did some triathlons just because they're easier on your body. Yeah,
absolutely. Where do you
past that now, but I stay active.
What about the swimming? I mean, is that from you had a little bit of experience sailing? Is that, I mean,
I swim. That's probably my weakest part of the triathlon is swimming, but I do know how to swim. That's about all I can say. I never won a triathlon. I finished.
I was just gonna go to another question. I'm a college student considering the medical field. How have you dealt with the difficulty of holding and caring for infants who are sick? Right, so a little bit like that stress question, but it's specific.
I think that, people will say that. How can you work in a NICU? It's so sad. But it is not sad. It's the majority of times it is a very, very happy place. I mean, to be able to, take these families and they come in and no one's really ever seen a NICU until they have to. And so it's not like you go on a tour because you're going to have to be admitted there. No one plans it. So these people come in and they're scared to death, and just to be able to keep them calm and hand them their baby, put them on their chest and just say, this is your baby, this is what your baby needs, and you need to be here with your baby, and just to make them feel like, I mean, most times they come in and they're afraid to touch anything. They just stand there with their hands by their sides, afraid to touch anything. And just to make them realize they can touch their baby, they can hold their baby, and they're not going to break it. I don't know. I forgot what your question was now.
No, that's you. You exactly answered that. It's your being empathic towards the patient and the patient's parents. I think allows you. I think you're saying allows you to be a little bit less sad, because you said it's not sad being there.
It's not sad. It's so happy to see them. You know, I don't know. We had a family that came in November, and they very unexpectedly had a. I think he might have been 23 weeks, and he was very sick. But you know, we kind of encouraged and pushed them to hold the baby almost right away. He was on a ventilator, and they did, and then I saw them the day they were going home, and they were just like so strong and good, and just, I don't know. And they left during the midst of the whole COVID thing, and I was like, thank God you're getting out of here. But he was there from November to March, so he was there a long time.
Wow. So another 25 weeks or something, like, or
Yeah.
20? I don't know.
Born right around Thanksgiving, and he went home December, January, February, March. 4 months, so 4.
Yeah. Okay. 16 weeks.
Yeah,
Wow.
16 more weeks.
That's like almost half his life.
Right.
Yeah,
he spent a long time there.
You must have a lot of stories, good stories, memorable ones. Are there one or two that have really stuck with you over the years?
As far as good stories, yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of. That family was a good story because it was recent, and I, you know, I didn't take care of that baby that much. I took care of him when he was very sick in the very beginning, and then they do primary nursing, so people took care of him a lot, and then it was like time to go home, and I was taking care of him again. And I was like, wow. And that was very nice to see when you see full circle like that. There's just a lot of.
I bet.
I mean,
any that really surprised you, the result, where you thought, geez, this is not a very promising, and then it turned around.
There's probably a number of babies I probably would have written off and said, why are we doing this? And we'd do one last thing, and then they would turn around. But yeah.
Wow, life finds a way.
Yeah. We had a baby that was born in when I was in Washington, D.C., that the parents she was 23 weeks, and the parents have been discussing with the physician what to do, and they decided that they were just going to let the baby go. They knew what all the situation was, and at that gestational age, there wasn't much hope. And so we took the baby was born, we gave it to the mother held it and put it on her skin, and the family was there. I think she had older brothers, an older brother and an older sister. And we took the baby into our nursery and put him like in a quiet room just to let her die. And all of a sudden, I think someone checked on her and she was crying. And so it was like, we have to do something. This baby isn't dying. And so at that point, we weren't even keeping her warm. It was just, we had her wrapped, but there was no heat on her. And she went through a lot, but she ended up coming back to visit at like 10 years old. I remember seeing her, and she had thick glasses, but that was about all she had. I mean, she was a happy girl, and that was a happy story.
Yeah, that just gave me chills. That must be a very intense moment to have that kid come back at 10 years old and say, hey, how you doing?
I know. And I remember having to go back into the parents' room and tell them, I walked in with a doctor to tell them, and they thought we were coming in to say that she's passed away. And we said, well, she hasn't passed away, and she doesn't seem like she's going to pass away. So can we give her some resuscitative support? So we did, and then that was that.
That's just your day job. I can't believe that. That's a good question. I mean, we talk a lot about servant leadership at the prep, and we live it. So more than words, Do you consider yourself a servant leader? I mean, you're kind of almost, and I don't mean this as a backhanded compliment, you're almost nonchalant about saving lives every day. Do you consider?
I think I love what I do. And I think a lot of people, like when you see now these signs about, thanks for healthcare providers, thank you for what you're doing. Everyone I feel like feels like we're doing our job and we love it. So it's not like we want, people are bringing in food and it's wonderful, but I think people kind of feel like, my husband said this when he came back from the military too, when people said to him, thank you for your service. He never knew what to say about that,
Or-
I remember someone running up to him and giving him a big hug when he came back from somewhere, and he was just kind of stiff and didn't understand. And I said, and I had to like kind of explain to him what they were going through, that they felt a need to thank him because he's like, well, I was just doing what I do. I'm doing my job. And so I think it's the same kind of thing. Maybe other nurses feel differently, but I kind of feel like it's my job and I love it. So
Yeah, I think it's just so
there were
much.
many times during this whole pandemic that I felt glad I had a job because there were so many people who were not having a job. So
I have one for you. We talk a lot with the kids about encountering an obstacle or having to go back to the drawing board is just a mile marker on the road to success. Did you have a bump in the road at any point, either professionally or educationally, where you were like, oh boy, gotta reset here?
I had a lot of bumps in the road, I feel like. I think that I frequently had to reinvent myself whenever we moved or did anything, and I'd have to say, all right, what am I going to do? We'd move, and I'd had a job I loved, and then we had to move, and it would be like, now what am I going to do? So
Yeah.
I think I still kind of think of doing that, every time you start a new job, how am I going to reinvent myself and do something different? And that's why, in Rochester, I said, I'm going to do surgical babies now. I'm going to, and I came back to the Massachusetts area and I was working with the neonatal abstinence babies because it was just, something different. Let's try a different thing. So I guess the bumps in the road would have just been military moves, but I just kind of made the best of them. As a woman, I think that a lot of the women at the prep may not agree with this, but I kind of ended up making a choice when I got married that my career was probably going to be the second career. I wasn't going to be able to do everything I thought I was going to do when I graduated college. We were kind of told we were going to be, leaders and, I don't know, do a lot of great things. And I feel like I kind of made this decision to raise my children, move with the military, because I couldn't really do both. Somehow I probably could have, but I didn't feel like I could. I couldn't be a good mother and the other part that I wanted to be. So I'm very happy with how it's worked out. I love how my children have turned out and I'm proud of them. So, but there were those kind of bumps, I guess if you'd call those bumps in the road, but looking back, they were good.
Yeah, well, you're making your husband feel good because if your career was the second career, it's a pretty good career. I mean, you might have accomplished a couple things. I'm just saying.
Thank you.
What was I going to say? I got another one. Just a comment. Your career is inspirational. As a fellow alum, I'm inspired by your work. I wanted to ask you, we do this thing called speed round, and we don't have time to do a full speed round, but I wanted to ask you a couple of my favorite questions from the speed round.
Okay.
So short answer, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, what profession might you try?
Oh, Lord. Teacher? I don't know.
Outstanding. Science or math, or would you branch out to the humanities?
I don't know.
It's all right. You're allowed to not know.
I like math. I could probably do math. I like math.
There you go.
I feel like, yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I feel like I teach math a lot. There's a lot of new nursing students that come in and they, from so many calculators, they don't seem to know how to do the calculations that we used to do on paper and in our head. So I feel like I'm constantly teaching them math.
Isn't that fascinating? So You are a teacher. It's not a, you're not
Well,
allowed to answer.
and it's true. I think any nurse is a teacher too, because you're teaching parents, you're teaching everybody. So yeah.
No question. One last one to wrap up on, of the 5 Zavarian values we, abide by and put forward at the prep: simplicity, humility, compassion, zeal, and trust. Which one resonates for you in particular?
Compassion, I think.
Ah, well, I
Oh,
walked right into that one from a nurse.
yeah. But I do feel it, when I look at someone, I feel, how would I be if I had to walk in their shoes? I'm kind of always turning it around that way in my head.
Wow, that is the perfect answer for a caregiver and a prep grad. Marybeth Gillespie, class of 77. It's been so nice visiting with you.
Thank you very much, Chad. It was
Thanks
nice.
so much for taking the time, and be safe. And really, we thank you so much for the work you do. I know it's your job,
I
but we
know.
thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay,
Thank you.
take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.